Today we're going to be talking about quantum theory and some of the philosophical undercurrents in that quantum theory has some very strange philosophical implications of what we can know about the world and what the world that we can or maybe cannot know is. And so specifically, I'm going to be trying to speak around the question of whether or not it could be the case that quantum theory's sort of philosophical tensions that sometimes we take to be unique to quantum theory might actually just be instantiations of classical philosophical tensions, particularly Kant. So this is a slice of the work I've been doing for my MSc dissertation, which, full disclosure, is due tomorrow at 3 p.m. So in the Q&A, go easy. The structure for this talk is we will introduce quantum theory, then we will overview Kant's epistemological sort of separation between the noumenal and the phenomenal. Then we'll consider what an interpretation is, what interpretations there are, and then we will attempt to contrast the interpretational landscape of quantum theory and with Kant's framework. The motivation here, generally speaking, is simply that if it is the case that it is an instantiation of this classical philosophical divide, then quantum theory poses to sort of inform some of our kind of more classical tensions in philosophy. Likewise, some of our more classical philosophical work and readings might pose to help us resolve some of our quantum confusion, thus reinvigorating classical philosophy. So, quantum theory is a theory in physics that very successfully attempts to predict the world at its smallest, down to the particle level, down to below the particle level. It is able to sort of make quantitative assertions about specific properties of particles that's accurate sometimes up to 10 decimal places, which is a lot in Newtonian mechanics, which was very revolutionary in its time. It was probably more like 3 or 4 decimal places. Useful for predicting the trajectories of cannonballs, but not necessarily the magnetic moments of an electron. Its applicability is ubiquitous. Parts of pretty much all modern electronics are sensitive to the level at which quantum phenomena would have a broad effect and are able to exploit these quantum phenomena. And so for pretty much any piece of electronics that you have, we need to have a good quantum theory to make them work. And so, if anyone has a phone that's working on quantum theory. Quantum theory is good. However, it is weird. Things, according to quantum theory, seem to be capable of being in multiple places at once. There's this idea that any given particle can be in superpositional states. Quite a famous elucidation of this phenomena was Schrödinger's cat. This idea that a cat can be both dead and alive at the same time seems contradictory, but quantum mechanics, if we were to take its implications up to the macroscopic, seems to imply this. By the way, Schrödinger's cat was a reductio ad absurdum. Schrödinger was trying to show that quantum theory is kind of ridiculous. However, we tend to take it literally nowadays, just something worth noting. It also seems to show that particles have this strange interconnectedness about them, whereby if 2 particles are entangled, one particle and how it changes seems to be able to affect the state of another particle, its kind of particle partner, instantaneously, no matter the distance between them. That's kind of breaks away from what we would intuitively imagine to be the case in any sense, but also quite famously general relativity, where we have the speed of light, a limit at which information can move through the universe. And on the epistemic front, it's not really clear whether or not quantum theory is telling us something over and above our knowledge of the world. Whether or not quantum theory is able to perceive the world in a higher way of all the possibilities that it is, or if quantum theory is lacking in information and it's sort of not able to make its mind up, but we, with our human consciousnesses, our understanding of the world, are able to see above what quantum theory tells us. So there's a strange tension here, both ontologically, quantum theory tells us about the world, and epistemologically about what quantum theory seems to say we may or may not be able to know about the world. So just to sort of pivot to some epistemology, and this was something we'll use for the rest of the talk, we'll consider Kant's epistemological framework. So Kant had this divide between the phenomenal realm and the noumenal realm. In the phenomenon, he describes this as the world as it appears to us, this world that is filtered through inextricably our sort of sensory interface, that no matter how deeply we look at the world, we're still only ever going to see something that exists in the mind, it's not the world itself. Whereas the noumenon is the world as it is, in itself, mind independent, it preceded our existence, it will exist afterwards. When our eyes close, the noumenon is what is sort of left behind. The key aspect here is that there's a gap. Kant supposes that there's a fundamental, non-traversable, epistemic knowledge gap between these two realms. We cannot ever reach the noumenal realm. This piece of art by Ruzi Rumia, I think, does demonstrate this well. Sort of as if we are the universe itself, putting on this mask of experience that allows the world to appear before us, space and time, pattern, colour, movement, and nevertheless we can't turn around and look back into the world as it is. It's like this kind of void of like meaninglessness. We're bound to the phenomenon. So, what is an interpretation? Now, this isn't the highest resolution, so I'll try and guide us through it. It's sort of a schematic of how science, I think, works and how philosophical interpretations fall into that. So I think we begin sort of up here. We have the world, the set of all experienced phenomena, and then we go, I'd like to understand how this thing that I'm experiencing and observing exists, and then we create a subset of experienced phenomena. And this, I've written, is the sort of apparent territory, the world as it seems. Now we bridge down into the level of theory. We create an explanandum, which is sort of a formalized set of that which we wish to explain. And we as physicists will then attempt to create a mathematical formalism by which we can predict this explanandum. We can have multiple formalisms for any given set. So we have Newtonian mechanics, we have general relativity, we have Lagrangian and Hamiltonian mechanics. So we can describe the same thing with varying mathematical formalisms, but some are sort of more useful than others for the particular purpose, I suppose. And then different mathematical formalisms will then themselves bear different philosophical interpretations. Some formalisms will sort of imply this about the world. The philosophical interpretation is where it's almost as if we imagine the formalism to be a conscious entity in itself, and we imagine what would the formalism see the world if we were, how does the world look to the formalism? And that's what we sort of offer to the world as the interpretation. This combines, I would say, to the explanation, or the theory, the ensemble, the map of the territory. It's also at this level of philosophical interpretation that we are able to make a statement that explicates the alignment of the formalism with our intuition of what the world might be. And this is useful because we need to sort of contextualize intuition with our scientific frameworks in order to, I would say, really do science in any meaningful way. There's probably two goals to science. One is to innovate, to produce sort of quality of life improving technologies. In order for researchers to do that, they need to sort of understand the theory, have a grasp, at the very least know that the theory definitively is counterintuitive. And then the other main goal of science, which is to satisfy curiosity and ease existential qualms, has to have intuition built into it on account of what use can an explanation be if it's not comprehensible. So then we have the world as it is, and this is sort of untouchable by the theory, but hopefully the theory might correspond to it. Now we might ask what interpretations there are. So the interpretive landscape of quantum mechanics. So I think there's about 4 types of interpretations, and these seem to have, roughly speaking, epistemic divergences amongst themselves. The main difference is the way they treat what we can know about the world and what quantum theory can know about the world. So the first set are interpretations of quantum theory that say we're missing information, that the amount of information we can have is effectively incomplete, and the result of this is that we have these kind of strange implications. So Einstein famously adopted this when he labelled entanglement as spooky action at a distance. He was sort of trying to dismiss it. He thought that there was like a defined reality out there, and quantum mechanics just wasn't capable of touching it. Then we have the ontological realist set of interpretations. So these theories kind of just take quantum theory to be literally descriptive on the philosophical front. So some examples, and we'll get a bit more into these later, many worlds, the Everett interpretation, the idea that there's a branching infinite amount of realities. We have spontaneous collapse, and the Wigner von Neumann interpretation, which takes consciousness to be that which turns reality from what quantum mechanics describes it up to what we experience. But these take the description of the world by quantum mechanics to be literal. It's just there's weird things that then happen that result in us seeing it as different. Next we have the observer bias type set of interpretations. These effectively say that quantum mechanics isn't able to describe the world directly. It's only able to describe the world after we've interacted with it, because by measuring the world we sort of change it in a weird way, and so we're bound to see a recently changed or altered version of reality that then has its own kind of weird implications. So again, this is another way of sort of explaining away quantum theory's implications. The example here is relational quantum mechanics, which was proposed by Carlo Rovelli. Finally, we have quantum theory isn't physics. This is not a popular one. It's a very controversial one. Basically, the basic idea is that quantum theory, not only is it not a theory of a physical reality that's untouched by us, it's not even a theory of physical reality at all. It's actually just a theory of our knowledge of the way we kind of build expectations of the future sort of within the human mind. And this is labelled quantum Bayesianism or cubism. There's a French physicist, philosopher named Michel Bitbol who also aligns with this. And I think maybe my supervisor at Fabian does, but it's hard to say. In order to have a conversation about how quantum theory relates to Kantian epistemics, we're going to consider how each set of interpretations aligns. Our first set of interpretations, in Kant's words, we would then describe this as quantum theory has been evaded by the noumenal. The noumenal is below what quantum theory describes. There's no sort of contact here. Quantum theory remains, in this sense, in the realm of the phenomenal. Then, on the ontic realist set of interpretations, we might suggest that quantum theory captures the noumenal realm. Exactly. A sufficient interpretation of quantum theory is then a sufficient interpretation of the world. Next, we have the observer bias set, which we might say quantum theory then is describing sort of a relational middle ground between the noumenal and the phenomenal. It's describing neither the noumenal nor the phenomenal exclusively, but just the way in which the two touch, because you still have a physical reality that exists out there, independent of mind. But the second we try to use quantum theory to describe it, we sort of end up changing it. And then finally we have the quantum theories in physics. This one would then be a direct description of the phenomenon, and it's almost sort of curtailed the obligation to explain quantum theory's predictive power whatsoever. It's not even like spoken about the world metaphysically. It's well, you might describe it as like a metaphysics of the mind. It's just attempted to create a physical theory of the way we see reality. How might that align with Kant's epistemological framework? Well, I suppose that would support Kant in that his idea was that we can't know the noumenal. So here's our conclusion. If then we are to look for philosophical resonances between quantum theory and Kantian epistemology, we must look towards the ontic realist interpretations, such as the many worlds, the ever interpretation of an infinite number of universes, the spontaneous collapse interpretation, which is this idea that it just randomly turns into the world that we see, or the Rigganov von Neumann interpretations, which suggest that it is consciousness that alters the world as it is. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joe.